Okay, very good. It's 6:30. We'll probably have some stragglers coming in. That's okay. I know it's dinner time. So, first of all, before we proceed, pre-COVID, I did a whole ton of these presentations, and um, I did them in person. So obviously with COVID, everything's become virtual. And if you were all in my presentation in one of the libraries, garden clubs, senior centers, or what have you, what I would do is I would hand around a sheet, a sign-up sheet, and you would put your name in down so that I could email you the presentation. Um, so because it's got embedded videos in it, it's got a lot of good tips. It's got some tables worth of information in it and all that. So figured you'd want it. Also, there's a few other resources I sent out. And you know, I have a gardening group on Facebook that has 70,000 people in from around the world, interesting stuff. And, you know, we send out links to the presentation and other stuff. The gentleman that does the business with me, Eric, he has his own uh, uh, Facebook page as well. And so anyway, we send out, we don't spam anybody. So we do let you know, that just heads up to everybody, that I've been trying to get seeds, and it used to be that you could get them from the, even if you're not local here, you get them from the University of Rhode Island, give them away for like 25 cents shipping and handling per pack, 1-year-old seeds, burpee seeds. But they're not going to do it this year due to COVID. And I've been trying to purchase seeds on burpee and Johnny seeds and Baker seeds, Baker Creek, and it's very slim pickings out there. So what I suggest for you all is to go out and buy your seeds now. Just an FYI, I just encountered that a little while ago. So so this is my email. So I want you to send me your email so that I can email you this presentation, or else I'll have, you know, no way to get it to you because I don't have a list of who you folks are. Also, the bottom one is Blackstone Valley Veggie Gardens. There's also an email form. If you fill out, there's a form there, and you click submit. It'll also send me an email. And if you go in and use the later the second one that you do from the website, you can go and look at all the garden projects we've done. You can hear some YouTubes and some lectures on raised bed gardening and all kinds of stuff. So you might enjoy that as well. So, okay. So that's my contact information. I'll show it again in the end so that everybody will, you know, make sure to stay in touch. And also I take questions if anyone has any questions about gardening. I've been doing it a long time, and I'll gladly answer any questions I have. If I can't answer them, I'll certainly send you to the appropriate place to get them. So, is anyone on from the library? No, that's okay. Okay, so anyway, thank you very much to Randall Library and Stowe for this for hosting this presentation. And my contacts there with JL, Chris, and Tina. They've been very kind. This is the third in a series. So, so anyway, and what I would appreciate, if you could, to write your questions in the chat, and I will get them in the end. If anyone comes on from the library, they can probably manage that. But if not, then if you just write them in the chat, we'll get to them at the end. I always leave some time at the end for Q&A. So anyway, composting. This is basic home composting. Questions people ask. Do I need worms? How do I compost? Does it smell bad? What is compost? So this is me, and this is a bean. Don't ask me why I put it in. I thought it was funny to have such a big bean. This is Eric. He hasn't been doing many presentations since COVID, but he is a master gardener and a great resource for me. So before this, I'm going to show this. This will set the mood. This little video will tell you a little bit about, you know, about composting. So, all right. demystify.
Today I want to share with you all the bare bones to starting a compost pile. We moved to our off-grid property a little over a year ago, and even though we weren't planning to have a really big garden our first year, we just had a lot of other things to take care of, we did want to start composting and amending our soil because when we're ready to garden, we want to be good to go. And building compost and soil is just something that takes time, so we thought, why not get started now instead of later? We did quite a bit of research online before getting started, and honestly, it's really easy to get overwhelmed. There is a scientific process behind composting, and it's really easy to get lost in the details and the intricacies, so I just wanted to create this video to show you just how easy it can be. Where to put your compost pile. We chose to find a happy medium and put our compost somewhere where it wasn't going to be in the way, so it isn't in our main living and walking area, but we also didn't want it too far from the house because we knew that if we're putting our kitchen scraps in the compost pile, the further away, the less likely it is we would compost. So we tried to find that happy medium. Having it too close to the house, you risk it smelling if it's getting out of balance, too wet, things like that. So that's why we chose to have it out of the way, and also we didn't know how big we wanted to grow our pile, so we put it in a space that allowed it to grow. One tip of advice, if you have a bigger property and you have a little bit of flexibility on where to put it, you might want to put it a place where you can back a trailer up to the pile, because we frequently are out and about when we pick up things for the compost pile, and it works really well if we have a trailer of stuff to just dump it off right here like we did with this grass yesterday. What do you put your compost in? Well, Mother Nature doesn't use anything. Stuff just falls on the ground and it decomposes, and it's okay. So if all else fails, you don't need anything. Just make a heap on the ground and call it a day. We chose to use pallets because we already had them. We feel that this does keep it a little bit more contained and gives you a compost area. And we also feel that it helped us build up rather than out. So we've liked them. They've worked really well for us. Another option is to buy a compost bin or tumbler. This might be a popular option for small-scale composting, or maybe if you're in more of an urban environment and you don't want some pile like this sitting out in your backyard, or maybe you're afraid the neighbors are going to complain. Bins and tumblers can be a really good idea. I'll link to a few of them below this video. What do you put in the pile? Organic waste. Brown stuff and green stuff. Carbon and nitrogen. However you want to word it. It's advised that you don't put in meat products, dairy, and that you don't use waste from animals that are meat eaters. And there's probably a few other things. I'll go ahead and link to some do's and don'ts below the video. Nitrogen, or green stuff, is things like lawn clippings. It's advised that you try to get this type of stuff pesticide and herbicide free if you can, because that's going to make its way into your compost and ultimately your garden. Also, things in this category are food waste, coffee grounds. Coffee is pretty much our main food group, so we have that one covered. Manure, that's a really great source of nitrogen. Again, for manure, you probably want to do a little bit of homework to see what that animal ate to make sure that's something that you don't mind being in your garden. This type of stuff also tends to be wet and retain a lot of moisture. If you get too much nitrogen in your pile, there's a good chance that your pile will get kind of stinky or slimy, and that's a sign that you need more carbon. Carbon is a lot of that drier stuff. This stuff may be a little easier to get. It really depends on who you are and the season. An example of carbon are things like leaves. Those are pretty easy to come by in fall. Sawdust, that's really easy for us to come by on our property. Cardboard, paper, and even hay or straw. So how do you get all this stuff? In a perfect world, you would have all this stuff on your property and plenty of it. We have a few of these things on our property, but in all honesty, it's not enough to amount to anything. So we started looking beyond our property for materials and resources. This morning I woke up and I thought, you know what, I'm gonna get some carbon today. So I went to our local park, and there's a lot of trees there. It's fall, all the leaves are on the ground. So I went with my rake and a few trash bags, and I came back with a trailer full of gold. For making the pile, you add a little bit of green, you add a little bit of brown, a little bit of green, a little brown, shake it all around, and that's it. Let me tell you another secret. If it's not perfect, that's okay. This wasn't perfect, and I don't know about you, but this looks like compost to me. Usable compost at that. Now let's talk about caring for your pile. While it can be complicated, it doesn't have to be, and it isn't for us. We simply grow the pile to the best of our abilities, and we try to water it every once in a while. Ideally, you want to keep the pile moist. For us, because we're off-grid, water isn't in abundance, so we try to do what we can. We do try to churn the pile and mix things up when we remember. Again, that's probably every 2 to 4 weeks. I don't know that this is absolutely critical, but it can help speed things up. When will the compost be ready? I believe that really depends on the pile maintenance and also what you put into the pile, likely the time of year that you start the pile. We started this one in spring, early spring, and the pile was pretty large when we started, and it's condensed down a lot. We didn't take super great care of this one, but I'd say that looks like pretty good compost, and that took probably about 6 months. And for the basics, that's about all there is to it, guys. That's it. We're huge advocates of simply getting started. While we do try to do our research and understand what we're getting ourselves into, ultimately, we don't want to suffer from analysis paralysis. So while there's probably a lot we could be doing differently, in the end, this is working out pretty well for us, and we do have usable compost that's ready to go in the garden. If you enjoyed this video and you want...
Okay, so a couple of things about that video. You notice she used more than one bin. I have 3 bins. I actually have a bin that's kind of like this chicken wire, same concept as the one with the pallets. And I have a tumbler, and then I have a stationary bin. You need more than one bin if you do it in good amounts, because if you're throwing a bunch of stuff in to make compost, and it takes 6 months, and you're turning it and you're keeping it moist, like she said, right? And finally 6 months comes along, and it's beautiful black gold, then what are you going to do with the banana peel that you just ate? So you usually have more than one pile in different states of decay, so that you'll have, a nice fresh black batch. So in any case, and did you notice that one of the piles was real high, the one that was just starting out, it was just still grass clippings and leaves, and the other one was real small and black. And that's what happens, because the compost really, you probably get about 20% or 30% compost by volume of the stuff you put in it, because the stuff you put in it is fluffy. But we'll get over that. So anyway, what is compost? We'll go over how do you make it? How do you store it? How does compost feed the garden? And how do you use compost in the garden? So, what is compost? Composting is a natural process of recycling organic materials such as leaves and vegetable scraps into a rich soil amendment that gardeners fondly nickname black gold. That's what compost is. And people always say they started a compost pile and it didn't turn to compost. It stayed, vegetable scraps and leaves and whatever. Well, that's because you probably need to adjust your levels, and we'll go over that too. It has to work. It always works. If leaves didn't compost, I know I live in where we have a ton of big old oak trees and all that. If leaves didn't compost, then we would even the biggest skyscrapers would be, tipped to the top with leaves, because if they never broke down into compost. So Mother Nature, like she said, Mother Nature has been composting for years and years. So if you do what I say and use the right portions, it's going to work for you. I guarantee it's going to work for you. So money back guarantee, it's going to work for you. Okay. This seems to have stuck here. There you go. Okay, so what do you put in your compost? He was talking about it, because for those of you who have never composted, you might not have known what she's talking about. She's saying greens and browns, greens and browns. So brown matter is stuff that's high in carbon. It's easy to come. I think it's easy to come by, because I live in a place that has a lot of trees, and here in, you know, where I am in Blackstone, Massachusetts, we have absolutely beautiful foliage and, you know, very tall trees that drop their leaves every season. So fall leaves are the main component for brown matter. Shredded cardboard, you can use wood ash, you can use newspaper, peanut shells, you can use corn stalks, and you can use straw, not to be confused with hay. Straw is brown matter. It's high in carbon. It's very dry. This stuff is dead. It's lived, you know, it's used to be alive, you know, made from uh, cardboard, obviously is made from wood, leaves are from the trees, newspapers made from wood pulp, peanut shells, all that stuff. It used to be alive, but it's dead. It's brown. It's dead. So the green matter that's high in nitrogen, uh, you can use manure is a great source. And matter of fact, once I have a very big garden for a home gardener, and once I use up all my compost, when I need to supplement every couple of years, I go down to the dairy farm, Wright's Dairy Farm, in a couple of towns away, and I order a whole truckload of the cow manure. That's a dairy farm, so it's great. It's got very high in nitrogen. Also for green matter, you can throw, obviously not in the same amounts. You don't, but every day you can take your coffee grounds and you can throw them right in your compost. It's actually high in nitrogen. It also is high in the macronutrients, other macronutrients as well. Coffee grounds, as a matter of fact, I have this, I do some charity work for a community garden that gives the food to the food pantry. And one of the ladies down in Blackstone from Betty's Donuts, she gives me all her coffee grounds, and we use it. We either use it as a soil amendment. We have been using a soil amendment, but now we have a big compost bin up there, so we're going to be putting it directly in the compost. Grass clippings. You know, the thing about grass clippings is if you keep your grass fairly low, it's good to use grass clippings. If it goes to seed, and you're like me and you don't get around to doing it and it goes to seed, you really have to wait until that compost is really black and it's finished all the way composting, or you may have grass growing out of your compost. I don't think you want that. That's, you know, that's not a good thing. So also hay, vegetable scraps, hedge clippings, eggshells. And the other thing about this, I have this one friend here in town who takes everything and she cuts it up real small. The smaller you can cut this stuff up, the quicker it's going to compost. The more you stir your compost, the quicker you're going to get black gold out of it. But even if you have a big old compost pile, if you do and use these proportions, 1 part of green matter, so 1 part of your grass clippings to 2 parts of leaves, that's all you really need. In 6 months, you'll have black gold. So you can start your compost pile now. You probably have some brown leaves, and you probably have, I mean, I don't know if you have coffee grounds. I can't live in the morning without my cup of Joe myself. So, you know, you can always get some, if you didn't need green matter, you can always order, you know, get a bale of hay, or you do have veggie scraps, and if you're going to, you know, trim your hedges or what have you. So there's always green matter that you can find, and you can definitely start it now. And then by the spring, you'll have beautiful compost ready to use. And you can throw stuff in it every, you know, when you use it. I mean, when you know, when you make a salad, you have leftover salad, you throw it right in the compost bin. And even in the winter, it doesn't freeze solid if you keep stirring it, because what's happening in there, right? The process of this compost, it's decomposition. It's a decomposition of the material, so it actually lets off heat, so it's warmer in there. Now, those big compost, municipal composts, where you know, they take stuff from nursing homes, cafeterias, and all that. They can compost, literally, they can compost anything. But those big, huge piles of compost, you can get, your compost will get to be about 180 degrees. And that's, that can be pretty painful to put your hand in. But your home compost can be upwards of 100, 120 degrees. The bigger the compost pile, the hotter it will get. You don't have to really worry about burning itself, but just keep stirring it and it'll get warm. And that's what you're doing really is you're kind of putting it on a slow cook is what you're doing. So anyway, let's go to the next slide. Okay, there's a few things I don't want you to compost. Pet poop, and I don't mean well, when I say pets, I'm talking about the typical dog and cat. Will pet poop compost? Yes, pet poop will turn to compost and it will turn to black gold. However, the manure of a carnivorous animal has bacteria in it that could make you sick. So home gardeners shouldn't use that in our compost because it doesn't get hot enough. So, I mean, if there was a big, like I say, if there's a big, huge municipal compost, then I'm sure they could probably put it in there and it would turn to, would turn, but it might. But you don't use pet poop because it has a bacteria that it's not hot enough to kill in your compost bin. You don't want to compost meat. It doesn't get hot enough. What happens is the meat rots. You get flies that go in, they lay the larvae is in there. You'll have, if you're not unfenced in here, but I do have 2 dogs, so believe me, they would go sniffing and digging in the compost. They do anyway sometimes, but so you don't want to leave meat in there. It just doesn't get hot enough to, for it to turn to compost. And you want everything to turn to compost within that 6 months time. So bones, the same thing. You can't home composters can't really do bones because will they decompose? They will. It'll probably take 3 years. So you don't want to wait 3 years for bones because you want it ready in 6 months. So you just don't. Fat, you don't put butter or anything in there because what happens is that any kind of oil will spread over the compost. It'll make a shield over it, and it'll keep it, it'll keep it intact instead of having it break down. So you don't use fat in your compost. So if you have like a big salad, leftover salad, and there's like a teaspoon of salad dressing with fat in it, I don't know if that would matter, but you don't put copious amounts of leftover butter and real lot of fat stuff. So you don't put anything with any kind of cleaning chemicals. You work very hard to make this organic compost, and you certainly don't want to minimize your efforts by using anything with chemicals, period. You don't put wet grass in there because wet grass has a matting effect and will decrease, the speed of, will slow down the decomposition process. You don't use dairy products because they smell horrible and they take a long time. Leave it. It's a very complex food, dairy, and it takes a long time to break it down. Obviously, you don't use any plastics because plastics are not organic. They're human made. So you don't use anything plastic. You don't use plants treated with pesticides or anything, that you've treated with pesticides that's not safe. Every once in a while, you may have a problem with a crop that you're growing and you have to use a spray. And if that spray says that you can, say it's a spray on your apple tree and the spray says you can harvest your apples a week after, then of course that leftover debris and apple cores and everything would be fine to use. But you don't want to put too much pesticides in your compost. colored paper tends to bleed all over the place, and it's not a very natural paper, and it doesn't really break down all that well. So those are things not to use in your compost. So we'll look at a couple of different types of composters. You'll see, believe it or not, they look quite different, but they're both tumblers and they both have something else in common. Over here, you see these little holes, because in order to compost, air needs to get in and water needs to get in as well. Not, not drenching water, but even the lady in the video said that it should be kept moist. So the air and water will go through these holes right here. And over here, it'll go through these little slats on the top. So instead of, it's that the way I, I have like I say, my compost pile is kind of like that lady's, her compost pile, except I'm using chicken wire and she has the pallets. But so it's real good because you can let air in there, and that's the other type is the just the compost bins that you can use the pallets, or you can just use some spare chicken wire. It's really fun. I want to tell you a story. I went to this lady's house one time to do a garden analysis, sustainability type of stuff. And she had a pile that was similar to this. And she asked me, she says she was extremely discouraged. I'm hearing an echo. Could everybody mute, please? Do you know how to do that? Maybe I. Oh. Okay, not sure. Okay, we'll see if it's continued. I'll still hear it. So compost bins. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts, back a few years ago, gave some compost bins out to different towns and cities, and for low cost. And there were two different kinds: a new age composter and an earth machine. And I think each type, this one was sturdier, but this one was actually bigger. So I think they were both like $25. This was a while ago. I think they've since had that that program again. And at one point, let me see if you guys were in the town of Stowe was in here. No, I don't see the town of Stowe. Let's see. I'm looking for Hudson. I used to live in Hudson. That's near Stowe. But these are the towns and cities in Massachusetts that had that program where you could get low cost bins. The towns and cities want you to compost anyway. It's a benefit, so they don't have to, it's cleaner for the town. It takes less resources and fills up less space in the town dump, actually. So it's all good stuff. So here are the towns that that gave out compost bins in Massachusetts. So when you have a tumbler, I showed you some of those tumbler compost bins. You don't have to use any kind of a pitchfork, or this is also a special tool that you kind of use your hand and turn it around to aerate the compost pile. You do want an airy compost pile. You want the air to get in so that it circulates through and it helps facilitate the decomposition process. So if you do have a compost pile, I would suggest using your pitchfork, probably I'd say twice a week. It needs sufficient air. So you may want to get one. I don't know if they're 35 bucks or something. Get a decent one at Home Depot or something, Koopmans or Lowe's or any place like that. So you do have to keep it aerated. So, okay, so I want to tell you how to use it, because everybody's, I think a lot of people, even people that don't garden, are willing to compost because it's good for the environment. You can use it on your lawn. You can use it for your flowers. The more compost you have to amend your soil, the less fertilizers you have to use, because it's got all the macronutrients in there. So it's really good stuff. So, but you, in order, depending upon how you're planting outdoors, depends on how you use it. So if you have a garden like for some reason I'm thinking about my grandfather today. He had a big old garden just out in the yard, old Italian, in one of the Victory Gardens back in the like 1940s and 50s and 60s. And what he used to do is he used to he used to hoe it in, actually, 3 inches of compost into his garden every spring. So that's how he'd do it. And but when you and that works. And so if you don't, then you will be reliant on fertilizers, and you don't want to be. Why should you be relying on buy fertilizers? The only thing I use for fertilizer is I may get some fish emulsion or uh, bone meal or blood meal. I know they sound gross, but some of them are products of a slaughterhouse, and if you're going to kill an animal, you might as well use every bit of the animal. So, but in any event, you don't need a lot of fertilizer if you have good soil. Everything in gardening starts with the foundation of good soil, and that all starts with using decent compost. I can't tell you how many times I've looked at, people have had, planted, spent a lot of money on plants and did a good job, and stuff didn't grow because they didn't use a decent soil, or they didn't use the right soil for those conditions. So anyway, let's talk about this. When you have a raised bed, when you're filling up your raised bed, okay, you use 50% of that bed. Fill it 50% with compost. Okay, 20% with garden soil, and 30% peat moss. And I want to tell you why. Okay, compost is all, as you know, it's all stuff that used to be living. And what happens to things that are living? It's ashes to ashes, dust to dust. So sooner or later, it loses its volume. So in order to stop that from happening, you add 20% of garden soil, or you could add some coarse grained sand. You can get a bag of sand at Home Depot as well, or one of those places. But you need that mineral in there, because obviously compost shrinks down, but the anything that is made of rock particles such as sand, that will retain its volume. So so that's what you use in your raised bed. And then 30% peat moss, because peat moss is very airy, and plants like air because they give the roots a place to permeate and get stronger and larger. So that's what I do, and that's how I build gardens when I build them for clients. That's how we build raised beds for people. So that's the mix that I use. So pots. If you do container gardening, you can use 30% compost, but you have to use a lot of potting mix. And what potting mix? You can buy it already mixed. What potting mix is basically is it's some really light and airy material. And the reason why they don't, okay, so it's a light airy material. It's probably peat moss or cocoa coir or something like that. It's very light and airy, because when you plant in pots, your plants have a limited real estate in order to grow their roots. So you want them to be able to grow sufficient roots. You want the roots to spread out. In order to do that, you need a really soft soil. So that's why you use more of the potting mix. This is the bad thing about growing in pots as opposed to raised beds, is because they dry out quickly, and they don't have as much compost material, because compost is heavy, and it's a tough blend for a lot of food crops, I should say. Obviously, a lot of ornamentals and stuff do great, and some stuff grows good as well, but I prefer to grow in raised beds myself. So if you don't have a lot of compost, what I do is it's fall, and I've done this for a few of my beds. I take, we have a course also. We have a class on closing up the garden, but I do take a bunch of compost and I put it in my beds and mix it up because I use copious amounts of compost because I don't want to have to go out and fertilize. So I just make sure I have it around. I have a fairly decent sized yard, and because I do have a lot of leaves, and you got to have something to do with the debris. So so if you don't have a lot of compost, what you do is you can plant your plants and then put a row of compost, few inches deep around the plant, the perimeter of the plant. So instead of, putting it everywhere, you don't plant your plants everywhere in the bed. So try to, conserve the compost by just putting it directly around the plants. And also, when you're doing that, make sure that you use, if you have a lot of manure, make sure it's well composted. That's another reason is that manure in itself, I said manure is a good compost. It is a good compost, but I remember when I bought it from this guy down in the dairy farm, he said, he works at a farm, so he said, do you want the old stuff or the new stuff? And I said, you immediately think, oh, I want the new stuff, but you don't want the new compost. If you live anywhere near other human beings, you don't want the fresh compost. You want it well rotted. You want it aged for two reasons. One, because you don't want to tick off your neighbors. Two, because you don't want to deal with it when you're trying to eat or sleep. And thirdly, because it can actually burn your plants. So you want to use well rotted manure, at least aged, for when you buy it, use that as compost. It can be aged, 6 months to a year and even longer. So, but you don't want to use the real fresh stuff. I think that's the gross smell of compost is a warning signal not to use it. So, and the other thing, talk about compost and the smell, right? If you were in a room, if we were all in a room together, I would have a mason jar full of compost, black gold. I would unscrew it and pass it around and have you all smell it, because it was made of, cow manure and leaves and grass clippings and veggie scraps and all that, but it has a nice earthy scent to it. No smell. If there's something funky smelling in your compost, it's not a good thing. And the other thing to talk about the compost and the smell, if your compost is, and this is what's going to help you maintain your compost as well. If your compost is stinking and it's sticky, that means it's out of balance. So put more dry ingredients in. They'll absorb all that extra moisture and that stickiness, and they'll take the smell away. So if your compost is too dry and the leaves aren't composting up, then add more, add a catalyst to it, add more green matter, and play it by ear. It says 2 parts of brown, at least 2 parts of brown matter to 1 part of green matter per volume, by volume, but that's not always rocket science. If it's too wet, put more brown in. If it's too dry, put more green matter in. So, okay, all right. Oh my goodness. Sometimes this, bear with me here. Okay. Oop. Okay, there we go. Perfect. Oh. Okay. Sorry about that. Sometimes when I'm displaying, the PowerPoint presentation doesn't want to turn page. I don't know why. So, but bear with me. All right. So, fun facts. Although the compost is decaying organic matter, if it's in balance with greens and browns, it doesn't smell. This is due to the fact that it's well aerated and the brown matter absorbs the odor, like I said. A good huge steaming pile of compost, which we don't typically have in our yards, can be up to 180 degrees. This is because it's in the process of decomposition. Um, you can tell if your pile is warm. It should always be warm if the composting is working. So what you do is you put your hand over the top of not on it, but hover it over the top of your compost pile, and you should feel it be warmer than the ambient air. So you can tell if it's working. But the big, huge composters, that's 180 degrees. Also, as I had stated, just to recap this, the composters like myself that have large gardens, I have two or three bins, so I can have mine ready at various times. So, okay, I'm gonna do a quiz, but we don't have audio, but that's okay. We'll just wait. Okay, true or false? Animal bones are easily composted. That answer is no, that's false. Animal bones are not easily composted material. They can be composted. It will take years, and our piles are not hot enough to compost animal bones. Okay. So a well-composted bin is full of black material known as black gold. I hope that's true. Yeah, that's true. Yes. Okay. A compost bin needs to be turned, at least on occasion, in order to mix the ingredients. Yes, it really should be turned. I said I should maybe change that question. It doesn't have to be turned, but it's going to compost a whole lot faster if you mix it up. Or what's going to happen is you'll get compost on the bottom where there's compression, you'll get compost, and then the top will still be leaves or what have you. So turn it, you get a bin, a tumbler, tumble it. If you don't, get a pitchfork, and you can use a hoe. A pitchfork is much more amenable to that because it aerates well. So, okay, so now I'm going to check the chat and see if I have any questions. Okay, let's see here. I have some questions. Very good. All right, let's go here. Okay, what kind of leaves are best? Let me tell you, this is from Eileen. Hi, Eileen. What I have oak leaves and I use them just fine. I do want to tell you though, when you use any leaf, it's best to chop them first because leaves they can also have a matting effect and they can stop the decomposition process. So what I do is I run them over with my lawnmower. I have a mulching mower, and then I take them out of the bag. I have a ride-on. I'm spoiled. But sometimes people have I saw an advertisement for them, but a battery one, but they have the gas kind as well. You have a leaf blower, but also they have, there's another switch on that leaf blower. If you turn it the other way, it can suck up the leaves, and then it has a mulching unit in it, and it'll put them right in the backpack that goes on the back. So that's another way to crush up your leaves. Some people buy there's a little unit that you can, a garden shredder unit. I think they're $100 or something that you can throw your leaves in, but it's best to I think it's easiest for me to just mow them over with the lawnmower. Someone asked if that people could mute themselves. Okay. Okay. Yes. Okay. The next question is from Chris. Hello, Chris. If using grass clippings, wouldn't lawn fertilizer chemicals get into the compost and affect the quality of the black gold? Yes, I do think, and I don't know that, and I don't, it depends on what kind of fertilizer, and some stuff washes away, but you're absolutely right. I'm a gardener, but I'm a horticulturist and a sustainability nut. So I don't use any kind of fertilizer on my grass. If I was to start new grass, I would rake in some organic, some of my beautiful compost to use, but No, if you use grass clippings, if you use Scots or something like that, then I probably wouldn't use it. Would it kill you? I don't know if it'll kill you, but I just don't like to use any chemicals in my stuff. So, yes, okay, the lobster shells, they actually have I think it's the uh, coast of Maine or something, has a lobster compost. And lobster shells can be good in your compost. They have a lot of uh, calcium and other good uh, micronutrients. So lobster shells are good. However, I'm not sure whether they would, uh, you know, if the pests and the critters might be interested in them as well. So if you can keep the pests away, if you're talking about putting them in your compost and you have a tumbler, that's I'm sure that would that would work out well. What I did one time is I had some clam, what do they call them? That down and right on, they call them quahog, stuffed clams, and I took the shells and I put them in my compost pile. Supposedly they break down. I put them in just as shells. That was like 3 years ago, and they're still on the bottom of the compost pile. They just don't seem to break down. So, um, okay, lobster shells from Al. Hi, Al. What about adding ashes like from wood stove? You can add ashes from your wood stove right into your compost, and that's fine. It's a good way to get rid of them. Um, but the whole thing is a lot of the stuff you can add as either into your compost or as a soil amendment directly in your garden. I would say that wood ash is good in the compost. Um, However, using it in your garden as a supplement, it is high in potassium. Excuse me, it's not. It's high in uh, is it potassium? Yes, it's high in potassium, which means it aids the plants in fruiting, but it also will throw your pH out of whack. So, 3 or 4 good shovels of uh, your wood ash from your compost, from your fire pit, it's not a bad idea. So, okay. All right. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. Oh, okay. Eileen, Middlesex Conservation District sells the New Age compost bin. I have 2 of them and they work pretty well. Okay, Middlesex Conservation District, if anyone wants to contact them. So good. It's good to know. I wish I knew that before I got I had actually a friend of mine gave me a huge tumble and it works great. And I got another one on uh, I don't know, it was Craigslist or one of the Facebook groups. You can get a lot of cheap stuff on Facebook groups. A lot of people move and they don't want to take their garden stuff, and so you can get a lot of stuff cheap. I like to do cheap stuff because I should change the name of the company to the Frugal Gardener. So because I like getting a good bargain. So okay. Okay. I need to go, but I need to look forward to getting the slides in the mail. Sorry, Kathleen. I hope that you sent me your email. So, okay, the notes, I'll send you that information, Al. Not to worry if you send me your email. Um, is it bad to put veggie seeds in your compost? That came from Stacy. Stacy, your veggie seeds may sprout in the compost. So it's best to plant your veggie seeds, I would think, in the garden. But a lot of times people have rogue plants in there. That's another thing. I just want to let everybody know about this. It's in the other class. We review it more. But if you're breaking down your garden and you have some tomatoes that they're just too green or they got soggy or what have you, you can put that stuff right in. It's wonderful nitrogen source for your garden. But if there's any disease or fungus growing on it, you don't want to put that anywhere near your compost. You have to get rid of those and put them in a bag, burn them. You can burn them and use the ash. It's not very nutritious, but you got to do something with them, or bag them and put them out in the trash. I would. So, okay. So you can put veggie seeds in the compost, but but they, like I say, they may sprout. You'll have rogue plants grown in the spring. It happens to my sister-in-law a lot. Ashes from a charcoal grill. I've never tried it, and I did hear that they weren't there was some kind of a toxic nature to the charcoal. So I wouldn't use that. Okay, so mentioned putting ashes. Yes, ashes. You're if you're going to use ashes as a soil amendment for the potassium because it aids in fruiting, you use it very gingerly because it throw your pH out of whack. If you're going to put it in your compost, I would say probably maybe 5%. So a few good shovels full in it. Depends on the size of your bin. That big bin that lady had, you could use probably 10 good sized shovels full, but you don't want to make a compost out of half ash, half ash, I said. It's not all that, it's it just won't help turn the stuff to compost. So, but you can, if it's using minimal amounts, it won't throw off your pH very much. So you can certainly do it. Okay. Okay. Hi, Joan. Al is my husband who commandeered my laptop. Okay. Hi, Joan and Al. Does anybody have any other questions? No questions. Okay. Now, before everybody goes, let me just make sure I have this. Okay. Oh, and that thing hung up again. Oh, okay. I'm going to give you this then. Right down here, you can see blackstone-valley-veggie-gardens.com. There's an email form in there to send me your email so I can send you all this so we can communicate. I'll send you some links, some tips, some links to some of my videos on YouTube, and we can stay in touch. Also, I think I was talking about this at the beginning of the presentation. Seeds are very scarce because of the pandemic. Like I say, University of Rhode Island used to buy all the seeds up from job lot, and they used to distribute them from next to nothing, free for schools and libraries, but we used to pay 25 cents a pack for them. They're not doing that this year. So, and I'm going up and trying to buy seeds in the shortage. So I'm going to have, if you're local here, I'm going to have a seed swap. Somehow or another, it has to be in the early spring, so maybe in the garage where it's air, people can just bundle up. But I'm going to have a seed swap. It's a great way to come, and everybody will obviously have masks on and be protected, because I'm all about that. And we can chat and share your seeds. You get all these seeds. You buy a pack of seeds, and I remember I bought a pack of beet seeds at Burpees, and there was 1,000 beet seeds. Now, how am I going to use 1,000 beet seeds? I don't like them that much, right? So in any case, we get together. It's like, this would be like the 5th year plus the first year post-COVID. So I'd like to, meet more of you if you're local, and we can chat. So I'll be sending out that invitation, or like me on Facebook, Blackstone Valley Veggie Gardens. Follow us, and you'll get more information about more events that we have. So, okay. So thank you very much, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your evening.